right. First of all, thanks for the bravery for everybody. I know everybody likes to talk data right after lunch. Here's what I'm going to do today is, first of all, I kind of need to know a little bit about whether or not we visited before, because I was at the National Fire Academy and there's a lot of familiar faces here. How many of you did I visit with at the NFA back a few months back? Okay, so about maybe a third, maybe a little less. So I've got a couple of things that we've got to do today. I think I'm biased, but what I'm going to share with you all might be as transformational as anything else that's ever gone on in the fire service during your career. It's my job to convince you of that. I'm not trying to just tell you how to think. I want to tell you what we're doing with this project NERIS. I hope that all of you in your capacities are at least familiar with the acronym, the National Emergency Response Information System. And I'm going to explain kind of what's going on in your states. I know that to some degree, maybe it does not directly involve all of you, or many of you, but I think it's going to. And so my obligation is to make sure that you walk out of here with a little more answers and maybe questions. And my hope is that I've got to get your brains thinking about how data, the input that we get from firefighters out there on emergency scenes, it should weigh into training. It should absolutely help to course correct how we train our firefighters, both incumbent firefighters, new firefighters. And I'm going to try to do that with enough energy and information that you don't want to get on Facebook, you don't want to return emails, you don't want to fall asleep. I'm going to try to keep you captivated for an hour. What I want from you all is, if I say something you don't understand, you disagree with, you have a question about, don't feel bashful about simply asking or raising your hand. This always goes better, as you all know, when we have a little dialogue as I progress through it. And so I want you to feel welcome to do that. And I'll do my best to make sure that I keep it streamlined. I know that I'm just starting a little bit behind, but I'll try to keep you back on time. The system that you're used to using, the National Fire Incident Reporting System, NFIRS, that has been around in some way, shape, or form since the mid-1970s, computerized since the early 1990s, it goes away at the end of the year. NFIRS has been on what I think most federal officials would call life support for the better part of years, maybe about a half decade, and at the end of the year it will go away. That's actually a separate, while it certainly coincides with what I'm here to talk to you about, sometimes what I think I need to start off with is the bottom line. That the reason we're doing this, the reason I'm here, the reason I'm a career firefighter and fire chief. That's really all I've ever done with my adult life. The reason I retired is to make sure that we get this project right in the fire service, and to make sure that as we roll it out, we make it benefit a lot of people. We want to make sure it benefits the firefighter. Like right now, if you ask most firefighters what kind of dividend they get from good reporting, good data input, I would hesitate to think of anything that you would reliably hear them say, across the country especially. There's departments that do a little better job than others. But it's not just them, right? It's the state fire marshals, it's you all. I think that if I was to survey the group here, of which I will not take the time to do that, and ask you how you use data from emergency incident reporting, rather, how you use that information to create, modify, establish training programs and curriculum, I think the answer is you don't. Because there's not a lot of information out there that benefits you, right? It's not designed, the current system is not designed for you. This new system, I think, makes you a key stakeholder, that it only seems appropriate in my mind that as we get better and more timely information about what our firefighters are doing in terms of risk and response and deployment, that can help to course correct, improve, and establish training that we need. And so I think that's a big deal. And so in your minds, if you want to know why there's somebody that flew in here to talk to you about data as it relates, not just to fire response, but EMS and all the hazards in between, the reason I'm here is that I think what we're doing, while the primary beneficiaries are the firefighters and the fire departments and the state fire marshals who have kind of shepherded data in most states for years and years and years, I actually think that it's training and professional development and the education of our firefighters, allowing them to be more safe and effective both for the community and themselves. I think it's this category that you all represent in your respective states that stands to potentially see the most benefit. Because when I ask fire chiefs, And that's a stakeholder group I naturally represent. When I ask them, like, how do you construct your own training programs in departments? How do you do that? And they think about it for a little bit. There's many fire chiefs that have little to no influence as to how their training programs within the department are created, right? They rely on people to do that. And so how are their training programs created in local municipalities, districts, and counties across the country? Overwhelmingly, the most common response I get is that we train on the stuff that we are required to have and requires CEUs and requires certification and licensure in our state. And we train on things that happen to be the most popular podcast on the various training podcasts. Now, I'm not saying that those aren't important, right? We have to stay certified. We have to stay licensed. We're always going to do that stuff. That's necessary. Podcasts, I guess, would be hit and miss, right? If it's a great topic and really hits the mark, then man, that's wonderful that they're doing it. It's not necessarily bad, but that's not how we would construct any other industry, right? That's not how they train medical professionals necessarily. We have to use data about what we're doing and not doing in order to figure out where we can improve with our firefighters. And so when I ask these firefighters about what their annual training programs really consist of, I was at IFSFI in Arizona just last month. You see those light bulbs go on. That there's actually no way for even some larger departments that have districts and battalions crisscrossing their city. You can make an argument that the way in which we train our firefighters annually across a city or a county, well, it may not need to be the same. And that may be true in your states too, that different areas require different types of training. Today, to have that kind of reconnaissance is impossible. In the future, that's not going to be impossible. Because as we know, data is essential in everything we do. That today there is a lot of things that populate the list of activities that fire service leaders have to worry about, right? We're talking not just about government efficiency, resource deployment, taking care of all hazards and risk, everything from the traditional structure fires to EMS to incidents involving active shooter, but of course we're also concerned more now than ever about firefighter safety, health, and well-being. And I would submit to you that oil is the common denominator in all those activities, all those things that we want to solve. As quoted by a friend of mine, like data is the new oil. If you got data, and you got an opportunity to actually solve things with some precision and some timeliness other than gut feelings. And with training, when you think about training, I think it's only, if I'm going to sit up here and tell you that I think that you really need to be paying attention to what we're doing, I think I owe you some evidence to show that that's the case. And so everything we do in NERIS, every idea, every suggestion, every integration, we look at from a risk, deployment, and performance standpoint. We say, does it help inform local fire departments and firefighters about risk in their community, how they deploy resources, and how they perform on the incident scene? And if the answer is no, it doesn't go in one of those buckets, and we oftentimes don't do it. Because we all know that the burden, right, the obstacle that we have to good data related to our business, it really isn't the system itself, right? The system itself is a thing right now. We will fix that. Technology does that. What's the hurdle that we really have to overcome? Well, for anybody that's spent any amount of time on the job, paid or volunteer, you know that the real hurdle is actually firefighters themselves, right? That if we give them busy work and make things more complicated and they don't understand it and it doesn't exercise good old-fashioned common sense, they won't do it and they will dismiss it. And so it's our obligation to make sure that we overcome that. Because if it's risk, right, this idea of that training shouldn't be one size fits all, that greater information about the probability of things occurring, multiply this by the severity, where risk is, where risk isn't, that helps to inform how we train and equip your firefighters. It's different training methods for different risk types, right? That as those things, as those variables are influenced, the way in which we train people has to be influenced. Deployment is important too. Right now, our training curriculum is rarely adaptable to the deployment model of the department because we're pretty clueless about how many departments exist in this country and what those deployment models really are. Whether they shuttle the water, whether they use hydrants. That's merely one example of probably thousands of data points that help us understand who our students are to learn. Something that we really don't have today. We've got gut feelings, right? We've got intuition. we really don't have a lot of hard data as to how departments and firefighters deploy regularly, and we have next to nothing about performance on the fire ground. Let me say this more plainly, is that if the reason when you go through secondary education that you're oftentimes quizzed is that they want to see how well you're doing, right? They want to see how well you're retaining information in which an instructor stands up and gives you, and whether you can regurgitate that in a manner that makes sense, that is evidence that you have retained it to become some part of your intellect. Today, if we want to know how our departments and our firefighters perform on the fire ground, what do we have to utilize? I'll wait. There's nothing. I would submit to you as a 15-year fire chief that if somebody was to corner me and say, Chief, I want to know that I get the biggest bang for our tax money from a performance standpoint, that I would probably quickly point to response times, right? Like that's probably the one thing in the current system that with some stable face I could point to. I could say that we get there quickly and effectively from the time it takes to process the call at the 911 center, turn out those firefighters in the firehouses, respond and get a first-in company on scene, to the arrival of the entire team of firefighters, if appropriate, at a structure fire or that sort of thing. That's what I would point to. And of course, if you really think about it, all of us have attended fires in which we got there in plenty of time. The whole team, the first-in company, and we still fumbled the football, right? We still left with a slab. And that's because there's a lot of the story that goes on after the parking brake is pulled, after the ladder goes in the air, after the truck has its pump gear engaged, that we just don't do today. And so that idea of knowing more about performance is inherently one of the most key components of the new system. We're asking not just different questions, we're not just doing things in a streamlined environment, we're trying to give people real actionable intelligence about how well their firefighters and their fire departments are doing, because this tells us maybe where we have some improvement to have, right? Like just in that example about secondary education, you get a quiz in science and the teacher sees that the whole class is struggling with the periodic table. It should tell that teacher that maybe we need to go over the periodic table again. And I think that similarly, when you look at the 7 current data points that we are going to begin collecting, they're optional, they're not mandatory, we're not adding to the burden of our firefighters, but things like water on the fire, how long does it take to start and complete a primary search? How long does it take to establish RIT? When is incident command or a 360 established on the incident scene? And being able to slice and dice this information across different communities to compare, be able to slice and dice it across large metropolitan cities, that Battalion 1 actually does better or worse than Battalion 2 on this specific thing, well, that begins to give us some intelligence that I think is actionable. I want to tell you a little bit about the onboarding today. That's one of my primary goals, that all of your states are currently impacted by what is a very busy year with ushering departments into a new system. Right today, actually, while I've been here, 1,000 departments are reporting into NERIS. They've stopped reporting into the old system and they are reporting into the new one. I'll tell you where we're at, and I'll tell you where we need improvement. There's a few of your states. I'll just be very blunt with you. I need your help. That there's not some magic switch that we flip and every fire department, big and small, knows what's going on. And so please don't sit idle on the sidelines if you have an opportunity to help with the project. I'll give you a few things that I think are talking points, just 5 things that I think you might need to know that hopefully if somebody was to challenge you're in training and education in 2025. This is anything but an easy job these days with firefighters who have information at their fingertips. I want to make sure that if somebody engages you, you're able to offer them some sort of elevator speech as to what we're doing and why it's important. Hopefully that will be interesting to you. And of course, I'll give you some answers to some common questions as we move forward. So if somebody, I've been doing this job for over 2 years now. And early on, I was telling people what we were gonna do. And now, thankfully, I get to tell people what we are doing. Today, a little over 12,000 fire departments have been invited into the system in various stages of onboarding across the country. About 10% of the departments have gone in and actually done everything that we've asked them to do. Many of them wait. That's a human characteristic, right? Most people wait until the very last minute. Nobody's shocked at that. The other thing is that most people will wait to make the transition closer to the end of the year, right? That if you know that you're going to be switching from one data system to the other, the thing I would actually do if I was a fire chief is I would try to get pretty much all of my data for 2025 in the old system, and then I would probably switch to the new system as close to the end of the year as I could without, getting jammed up for some reason. And that's what most fire departments will do. I'm not saying that's the best idea, since I know how the sausage is made. If 10,000 fire departments decide to wait, you know exactly how that's going to go from a support standpoint. But I tell you that to indicate like we're making good, steady progress every day. And so that's about 10% of the departments that represent the entire country. That's pretty good. And I told you that last night I updated these numbers. I had the date. I did not update the day, but I updated the numbers last night. But it is over 1,000 departments that are reporting incidents. If you want to kind of see where those look across the country, what you're wanting to see is blue. So we've been going FEMA region by FEMA region to onboard departments. That's not for any crazy scientific reason. It's just to make sure that we take little bite-sized chunks of the U.S. and that we can support departments as they have questions and problems. Any department that wants to onboard into this system ahead of the FEMA region they happen to be in, we do it, right? We work for those departments. I'll go one step further. We work for you all, right? You're going to get a handle on this system, and you may actually think of things that we need to be asking, doing, producing from a data visualization standpoint. And we're not just going to do that. We're going to be happy to do it. Because when we create an environment where people are benefiting from data, all together, right? If Maine has a good idea, that means California can also benefit from that data visualization or that data input. And so while I don't know that the National Data System has been a partner for this organization ever, it is now. And so I want you thinking about it. The blue indicates that those departments have done everything that we want them to do. The yellow indicates those departments have been invited into the system. You may see some geometry that's just missing. It's just blank, and that shouldn't shock you. We're clueless how many fire departments exist in the country. Every day we add departments. Every day we delete departments that are defunct. We'll have a good number at the end of this whole project. But what I can tell you is there's a lot of departments that have no boundaries, right? It's amazing to me the rural, gritty nature of some of America's rural fire service, right? That we are learning a lot about the people who protect our country. And so we are growing day in and day out to try to make this map a little bit more filled in. We hope to walk away because we're going to provide this analytics back to departments, that every department, whether they can afford it or not, because it's for free, is going to be able to get some information, some data visualization they just never have before, that'll tell them about what they do and don't do. I don't know all of your backgrounds, and I won't pretend to, but I can tell you when I first joined this project, I did not think that providing, analytics back to departments was that big a deal. And shame on me for thinking that. I've always worked for departments that had enough money to buy computer programs and had full-time analysts to do the work. I got a call when I was on a family vacation in Hawaii one morning from a fire chief in Tennessee. And that fire chief was a county fire chief in an all-volunteer department in the county. And he was ecstatic, and I'm not beefing up the story for your benefit. He was ecstatic because they had early onboarded into NERIS. They had switched over. They were probably one of the first 100 departments to do so. And he was excited because he knew, and he had been telling the board of directors for years, that they needed a station. I think it was on the north end of their county. And that now he was able to produce just a real-time map that showed him where the preponderance of calls happened to occur in their county. And he was excited. I don't think of that as that big of a leap, right? That's not crazy data analysis for departments, but it was important to him in rural Tennessee. And I think that probably every single one of your states has a similar story from departments where even basic analytics, not to mention that we're building this for the largest and most sophisticated of metros, they get to benefit, and that's pretty cool. Right now, as I stand here, we've got about 42% of the departments that have been invited, so we're getting very close to half. And one of the things that often goes a little unnoticed is the partnership here. that most departments, especially if you look at the quantity of incident records, about 32 million emergency responses that occur in the country. I'm confident that's undercounted, but as of something that we could hang our hat on, we'd say 32 million. Most of those are actually, the vast majority are submitted using a third-party records management system. There's a free way to enter calls into NERIS. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on a desktop, but it is the partnership with those records management companies that is probably the most vital to the success of our particular project. A project that really we're just getting started with. This is just getting us to that starting point. So you can see 27 vendors have gone through that process. 8 of them are already reporting. If anybody's familiar with the company First Do, they're actually the one that they have hundreds now of customers that have leaned into it, but there's many, many others that are in process or have already done so. And we've got about 150,000 incident records already in the system. I'll share some of what I think are pretty neat things here in a second. We just started, this is August map, but we actually just added FEMA Region 3 as well. That's kind of the Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Delaware area of the country. And so the bottom line is if you're in any of these FEMA regions, if you have any fire department or fire chief that you happen to be privy to a conversation and you're in one of these FEMA regions today, and they say they haven't heard from us, again, there's no magic phone book to figure out how you reach every department in the country. And so if you've got a department that's like pissed off because they haven't heard from us, I would tell them to be resourceful and email us. Then we get these every day. Some of these states are all over it. If you look at the state of Louisiana, Alabama, New Mexico, it's obvious on the map that those states have a really good handle on who their departments are, who the points of contact are. South Carolina is another really good one, and there are just states that I would have guessed to be a little bit more organized that just really struggled with this information. And we should have it nationally, right? There's no reason that something like this really didn't exist in a reliable format. So when you look at them, I can tell you that different states have figured out different ways to roll out information and make things work. And that's how it should be, right? That while we want a consistent national data set, we want to be on the same sheet of music, what I would tell you as training and professional development leaders in your respective states is that I have been just amazed at the number of states who have said this problem, right? This data problem, this is a problem. We're going to help solve it. And we recognize that a new system is part of the solution, but so is training our firefighters, right? So is causing them to care. So is causing them to understand the new system. It's different. If you look at the state of South Carolina, one of the things that they have done is they have intentionally rolled out in different regions training, virtual training, orientation, education. They've done it over and over. They've eliminated every excuse for a fire department and fire chief, more likely than not, to not understand the new system. They've worked with us from day one. The state of Oklahoma actually recognized that they had a lot of problems. Now it helps. I'm an Okie, by birth. But Keith Bryant, former U.S. Fire Administrator, current State Fire Marshal for the state of Oklahoma, said, we know we're going to have crappy data. We know that we have departments who are deficient. And recognizing that you got some work to do is half of the battle. That we worked with the state. I haven't seen Caroline Reed, but normally I see her here. They worked with the state training agency, found a little bit of money, and identified some folks to help deliver regional training. They've gone to every VOTEC in the state delivering training at 6 p.m. because they know that the demographics of their departments are predominantly volunteer. And when you look at kind of the clusters in the state of Oklahoma, those clusters of blue, you kind of see what you want to see. But what you find is that when they go to a VOTEC and a couple of counties come over to train, those people sign up, right? They get on board, they get their questions answered. And so what I'm telling you is that relationships matter. And some of you work with state fire marshals in those offices. Some of you are very independent from those. I would encourage you to be a part of this project. That you have outreach, you have influence, you have venues that we probably need to be at, or representatives from your state need to be at. And we're a cheap date, right? All we need is an invitation and we show up with flowers. And so that's not a bad thing at all, but we will continue to have to visit this problem. This is not a flash in the pan project either. One of the things that I hope you appreciate is we have tried to, as best we can, silo information into one spot related to the new system. There's 0 firefighters I have ever encountered that get on the job or sign up at their local volunteer fire department and say, man, I cannot wait to complete an incident report. Like, I am stoked for some check boxes and some drop downs. Nobody does that. I didn't do it. I'm not trying to, I don't know that I want firefighters that are programmed that way, quite frankly. But what we do have to do is we have to create an environment where local fire departments can help answer their own questions and solve their own problems in the system. And so whether it's training guides, whether it's the latest information on rollout, news, events, emailing questions into the help desk. I just got one, operational question sent to me just a little bit ago. This is where you point them. So the first part of that, the basic website, neris.fsri.org, that's the go-to for everything. That's where you log into the system, right? That's where you do everything related to NERIS goes to that website. If you've got somebody that's got an onboarding question, send them to that /onboarding. We've tried as best we can to make sure that information is there so that you don't have to have the answer to everything. You just need to know one website, because we think if we can get your attention at the state level, you can send some mass emails for us. You can help mention it to us in conversations that you're privy to. We think those are a few less fire departments, one conversation at a time, that will be caught flat-footed when we don't want them to. What I want to remind you is that this whole project starts with you. Like, this is going to be in the DNA of the fire service for years to come. Whether it's if we ever develop a reliable national mutual aid system, if we are ever going to move the needle in terms of firefighter safety, health, and occupational cancer, if we're going to really begin to look at how we perform on the fire ground, it is going to be data that's necessary to do that. Without that, how do you measure anything, and how do you actually know if you're improving anything? And so it's going to start with you, and it's going to be a continuous process. We're committed to it. And so if there's a few things I want you to know, I think it would be the 5 that I'm getting ready to cover for you. And like I said, I know that none of you you're not data analysts, you're not necessarily shepherds of the data in your state. I just think you're going to care more than you ever have about this. And we're going to do everything we can for free to listen to your needs, listen to the questions you can't answer, and help us integrate better into training, professional development, and curriculum that helps take care of our firefighters in our communities. So a few things that I want you to know about what we're doing. First and foremost is that we're getting better information after arrival. It's a top class priority for us, that we know that solutions and mitigating incidents, that whole story doesn't stop with the arrival time. That's actually when the real work begins. And so the system has been designed with a more robust list of actions and tactics. It's integrated with tactical timestamps I mentioned earlier. Those are those things like water on the fire, command established. We're asking about performance metrics to get a handle on the whole incident story after fire apparatus arrive. We're asking about fire conditions for the first time. What did you see? Light smoke showing, nothing showing, fire showing, because that helps to tell us about what our firefighters encounter. We're also asking about suppression methods, that for the first time, outside of a narrative, we're saying, what water supply did you use? What did you use to actually suppress the fire? How did you search the building? This idea that we can begin to know that firefighters in Battalion 2 on the C shift always stretch ground monitors, never stretch this, that can actually influence what we train on, right? That firefighters oftentimes get frustrated to train on things that they do regularly with some level of proficiency all the time. We can also now begin to know like what they need to exercise if they haven't, or what they may already be good at. So you can see a little screenshot of some of that. I'm sure that's hard to read in the back, but information about the water supply, the fire conditions upon arrival, and we're asking whether or not that fire extended beyond where it started. The actions and tactics list is just way more modernized, as I mentioned. I wouldn't expect you to be able to see that from the back, but what I want to do is focus on a few areas that I think will get your attention as being just different than it is in the current system. One is if you look at the suppression actions, structural fire suppression, we're just gathering more information about how we suppress and extinguish fires in this country, and of course that drills down into your local geography. Something that I think is kind of exciting is, the older I got on the fire department, the more interested in my long-term health and my ability to enjoy my pension I seem to get as well. And I care about that with others. If you look here, one of the actions and tactics in that right side blue box is personnel contamination reduction. So in the system, we're saying if you arrive on the scene of a smudge, of a good fire, we allow our firefighters to say, hey, we did on-scene contamination reduction. What is that? That's a gross decon, right? That's rinsing off the bad stuff after a fire. We are allowing them to say, hey, did you transport that stuff back, your gear, back to the station in a clean cab manner, allowing those carcinogens not to populate fabric areas that may cause secondary contamination to other people? Did you wash your gear after the incident? We know that with firefighter cancer, one of the things we're learning is that the first lines of defense of it are actually pretty damn simple. Wash your hands, go take a shower, don't wear your gear unless you need to be in your gear. Otherwise, you probably shouldn't be in it. And so if I was still a fire chief, what I would do is if I ran 100 structure fires, let's just use a round number in a given year, if I ran 100 structure fires and I found that we only did on-scene contamination 97 times, I would have 3 conversations to have in my department. Because those 3 conversations are either going to be that they forgot to enter something on the particular report, or that they didn't do something that we know begins to apply to the long-term health of our firefighters. That's actionable things that take care of our firefighters. I think that's a big deal. 2 is that community risk reduction becomes a real priority in this system. What we want to do is twofold. One is that we are collecting information. You see the screenshot. That's actually optional fields in the live NERIS system that ask about the presence of fire suppression systems or fire alarm systems in single-family residences, commercial buildings, you name it. We're asking that on every call. And when we beta tested this back, it was about a year ago when we began beta testing, it was August of 24. This was a common piece of feedback as we get these departments making medical calls, and they'd say, hey, I've got the option to say whether a fire alarm or sprinkler system was present in the building. Those don't belong together. I could not, disagree more. That if we get good actionable intelligence, think of it as reconnaissance on every medical call we go on, right? Knowing where alarms are present, where they're not present, where sprinklers are present, where they're not present, we begin to get a picture of our community that we do not have today. And that allows us to inform community risk reduction efforts that today are just as blind as any other aspect of our job. In addition to that, we have a community risk reduction module that is going to be part of NERIS. Right now in the current system, if you do something to reduce risk, there's really nowhere for it to go, right? The system today is built, whether it's the old system or even the primary system, it's built for emergency response. That's the target. We're building, and it will be released in early 26, an entire module where we're just going to ask questions about things that have nothing to do with the 911 call. Car seat installations, did you install smoke alarms or a carbon monoxide alarm, or did you do a show and tell, or did you have the opportunity to teach a kid exit drills in the home, stop, drop, and roll, you name it. That we want to know about what's going on in our communities. And so this is what this looks like, is that when you have an emergency incident, let's say that we have a medical emergency at this particular house, and this is what we would call on the job a frequent flyer. It's a medical emergency in which we've been to the location 9 times for a medical incident, 3 times to lift them up in the middle of the night. In a given week, 12 times in a week, every community, big and small, has people like this that are very needy on the 911 system. Well, let's say that we have that information from a response standpoint. We're able to weave in information about community risk reduction. In this example, we go and install bathroom grab bars, and we give a little bit better orientation to the side effects of medication to this particular party. And it's with this information that we begin to understand cause and effect and the things that we might prioritize in our community to reduce risk. And so weaving in both risk and response information is something, whether it's fire, whether it's EMS, is something that's a top priority for us. 3 is that we're able to get information about low frequency, high risk incidents. Right now, if any of you are challenged, or certainly anybody at the federal level is challenged to say, how many times do fire departments respond to active shooter events? The way in which you have to answer that question is you have to Google it. And we all know how reliable that answer is likely to be. We're clueless, because what I'm confident in is that every firefighter on duty is not waiting for the lights to come on in their fire station to be dispatched to an active shooter, right? The 2 mass casualty incidents I ever made in my entire life, they didn't start out as the dispatcher reading something about a mass casualty incident, right? They start as airplane accidents, right? They start as car wrecks. And so what we've done at this system is give the ability for our firefighters to flag incidents and say that we responded to something that is an active assailant, an MCI, disaster declaration at some level, an urban conflagration, right? This is like what you've seen in Lahaina and the Palisades most recently. Or number 7 involves violence against responders. You may remember me telling some of you back at the National Fire Academy that number 7 actually comes out of the state of New York. When we were initially rolling out NERIS in beta test form, New York said, well, we need something special for our state. We're collecting information about violence against our firefighters, whether that happens at a medical scene or a structure fire. And that's not, the system is not interested in local state configurations. What we're interested in is making sure that good ideas are spread throughout the entire country. And so we added it to the schema for the whole country that I think all of your states might benefit at some point in time, about a conversation about how many times firefighters encounter violent individuals, especially on the back of what happened in Idaho just a few months back. We're inclusive of things that matter in the new system. Number 4. We're asking information about rescues, because in the old system, the only things that really mattered was you had to either be a casualty of some variety, dead or injured, or you had to trust the dollar loss amounts that our firefighters entered. And we all know what kind of voodoo science they use to enter that kind of information. And so we're asking about rescues, displacements of businesses and individual people, even pets that are rescued. We ask that question. It's something that may have some utility when you're trying to make the case to local government officials. And of course, we're asking about maydays and firefighter rescues. We want to know about those situations in which firefighters are lost, disoriented, trapped, endangered, and what the outcomes are, right? That's good quality information that can lead to better training programs, better policies, practices, and operational impact in our departments. The last thing I'll share with you that is different, and that is an improvement that I want you to be able to rattle off. I'm hoping that you can help us spread the gospel here, is that aid is streamlined and simplified. In the current system, the old system, you had 6 options for aid. Automatic aid given and received, mutual aid given and received, other aid given, whatever that was, and then no aid given. And what I always encountered and what was most common at the INFRS help desk was that firefighters got really hung up on whether something was whether it was mutual aid or automatic aid. And that definition really kind of messed with them. And ultimately, I'm here to report, I don't think anybody cares. What really matters is that you understand whether or not you got help, whether you were given help, and what that circumstance was in which you were outside of your primary service area providing that aid. The cool thing about the institution of the fire service is it's by far the most trusted and visible governmental institution out there in all of your communities, all of your states, certainly across the country. And we have teamwork down like no other governmental entity does. Parks departments and law enforcement agents, nobody helps each other out instantly and with a smile on their face like the fire service, but we kind of suck at actually telling that story. And in a world of government efficiency, I don't know, I guess it's my opinion, that ought to be a story we have in our back pocket, because it shows that we work together as opposed to bloat ourselves with additional resources. Aid in the new system is simply in support of. This is the most common one, right? Like jurisdiction A has a big fire and a couple of jurisdictions come to help them put out the fire. Could be a car wreck, could be something crazy. You also have aid in lieu of. So aid in lieu of, a little fact that maybe none of you know, is that aid in this type of situation that I'll describe momentarily is not collected in the old system that's going away. It's actually, this was never supposed to be entered this way. Here, an example would be that jurisdiction A has a big fire and they are out of trucks. Happens all the time. They have another incident, maybe it's an activated fire alarm, and jurisdiction B goes by themselves to go check on that fire alarm. In the current system, the old system, 2 departments had to be present in order for aid to have occurred. In the new system, if you leave your jurisdictional boundary and go help somebody out, we think common sense says that's aid, right? You are helping another political subdivision of government. And so we collect it. It's aid in lieu of the other department. Here's the cool thing is that that response, right? If for jurisdiction B going into jurisdiction A, if I'm the fire chief of jurisdiction A, I'll be able to see the incident report for jurisdiction B, right? That I'm able to see when another entity comes into my area. This is imperative for departments that have robust automatic aid practices. I think of like Maricopa County and the greater Phoenix area where it's closest, most appropriate resource, not the technical jurisdiction. It's always the closest resource. To be able to view incident reports and know who is handling things within your boundaries is pretty important. The last example is aid acting as. That there are some circumstances in which jurisdictions will actually pretend to be in a very official capacity a resource from another jurisdiction. We created this primarily for some of the complex rules and setups of wildfire, specifically in California, that they had 8 counties across the state, that those counties acted as CAL FIRE on state lands, and so those departments today were having to report using basically different department IDs, very clunky process. Now they're just able to say like, hey, we responded to 123 North Main Street. When we were there, we were acting as CAL FIRE. That we're still Orange County, we're still Los Angeles County, but we were acting as this other jurisdiction. That's kind of a big picture one. The smaller picture is that the other day we had a department who had an active firefighter that died, and they had a funeral. And what did they do for that funeral? They shut down all 8 stations in their city, and they had companies come over and backfill, and were responding to calls in the city, acting as that city, right? It wasn't mutual aid as we normally think about it. It was they were just pretending to be firefighters of that jurisdiction. It was all prescribed. It was all premeditated. And so we're able just to document the different types of aid. And when you think about it, that becomes pretty handy in also telling our story and the relationship we have. What I would tell you is this. If there's anything I could convince you of today, it's that, yeah, I think you need to know what we're doing. I think you need to know where we're going. I'm going to do my best to do that. But we're just getting started. We are deeply committed. I'm the one token fire person on the project. But we are deeply committed to making sure that audiences that benefit from data that is related to things like risk performance and deployment for fire and emergency response, we're going to make sure that it benefits you. And so know that we're just not done. Whether it's dashboards that begin to tell us, I see in the future, and you all are probably going to help us with that, I would hope, is a training dashboard, right? Like maybe a state level training dashboard that starts to tell us about what's going on in your state that is sliced and diced from a perspective that might be appropriate for you. And you might ask me like, well, what does that look like, Jenkins? And I would say, I don't know, what does it look like, whoever? Right? You need to help design it because we're working for you. And that's not tongue in cheek, that's not lip service. That is 100% how we feel, and it's how I feel. So we're not done. We've got a lot of things in front of us. We're going to layer in sensors. We're going to layer in all sorts of third-party definitive data sets. What I kind of think of most importantly are like the real estate apps. If you want to know what we really have targeted in our mind for the functionality of NERIS, what I would say is think about the last time you looked at real estate on your phone. Right? First of all, if you were in the real estate market, what you didn't do is you didn't go pick up some catalog outside of some restaurant. That's where they always used to be, by my memory anyway, is you download an app on your phone, right? And that app begins to give you information about the property, but what else does it give you? It gives you information about things that relate to the property, but certainly are not property information. Things about walkability, crime, schools, any other destination, amenity, you name it, we're in that app, and that's what we want to do here. We want to take in and layer in information that's important for decision makers in local fire departments, training agencies, state fire marshals, you name it. We want to do it. Now with that, we have a pretty clear vision of where we're going. and this is where I kind of want to wrap and just kind of tell you what I need from you, is that we have a vision for training, that we're gonna construct an environment and an ecosystem and a framework in which data is used to help develop and modify and improve training programs. We think that the national data system can tell us about department performance beyond the basic information that we have today. And we think that training can be powered by NERIS. That's kind of my focus and my opinion, is that we can help power training programs with information about what our firefighters are doing, not doing, need improvement on, or are succeeding in, and that we can just create a training and professional development system that is data informed, making our firefighters, this is the real goal, more effective, educated, and I think we can also make them safe with this information, because we're lacking it today. Big deal from you is, what can you do for me right now? What can you do for the fire service right now related to this system? The most important thing I would ask you to take back to your various states and the people that might be interested in this that you represent here is first of all, think of venues that we need to be present at, that we need to help engage the fire service in your state. This is a 2025 is a transition year. The old system goes away at the end of the year. But if anybody's thinking this is a time-bound project, you're incorrect. It's a project we're always going to be working on, because while we're doing a lot of preaching right now, we're actually going to have to do about 50-50 listening and preaching coming up. That we're committed to version 2 next year, and we're going to make this thing work for the fire service. Make sure you yourself know a little bit about what I'm talking about. That you're seen as a subject matter expert and a resource in your respective states, whether you realize it or not. And so I would not want you to be, seen as uninformed about what we're doing. Those same websites I told you about to pass along to people, you probably need to spend a little time to review them yourself and look for opportunities for us to collaborate. We're booking dates already in 26. And several of you, I've been to your states, either in a capacity that I was invited from the state training agency, or it was local chiefs associations or whatever. But like I mentioned, there's very few opportunities that we have to make such a transformational mark on our business. If you find somewhere that we need to be, we will be there. We will be there at no cost to you. And we'll try to make it as entertaining as we can. So if that's not good bang for your buck, I don't know what is. But we care greatly about making sure that the fire service is involved in the ongoing development of what we're doing. We are also pushing all the training information out. And so if you go to that website I provided you earlier, just neris.fsri.org, you will find information that can be used for training and professional development. You got a chief officer, company officer, classes going on. I'd submit to you that one of the most important things we're going to have to nudge our officer level candidates, our officer level firefighters, is that they're going to have to get way more interested in data than they ever have. It's just not optional anymore. That we no longer have a technology illiterate firefighting force, right? Everybody we hire, just go in any fire station. Everybody we hire is on their phone and on the computer all the time. We've overcome that particular challenge. Where we have to help nudge them is we have to make sure the data inputs improve. We have been a business that has celebrated shitty reporting, right? That's how I was trained, that's how you were trained, right? It's get the report done, nobody cares, we never benefit from it. And if you had an experience that was different than mine, that's awesome. I hope that you did. I have yet. I have 189,000 air miles this year, real miles. I have yet to find one firefighter who says, that's not my experience, Tom. We love data when I got on the job. We got to change that, right? This is the kind of training information we're putting out there, that we want to help firefighters with very short, 2, 4, 5, 10-minute videos tops, about how you handle different incident types, how that data input needs to go. Every now and then I run into training officials, not normally training officials, I run into firefighters who think that videos aren't the way to train in today's day and age. We need a written manual, we need print this, and it's okay to have that opinion, perfectly fine to have that opinion. I just don't think it's right anymore. Every fire station I walk into, people are looking at reels, and they're looking at clips, and they're on TikTok, and that's not me either. But that is the fire service, right? Having short videos that can help them understand how things need to go in the national system so that we can take care of them, I think is vitally important. with that, I appreciate, Ken's always awesome to work with. You saw him even set up my PowerPoint for me, so gold star for any time I get that done. So I want to call him out specifically, but I also want to thank you all. That what I have found in the development of this project is that your organization has always been open-minded to understand how it's going to impact you, and I hope that what you walk away with from my little visit today is that we're not just doing something you need to be aware of, we're doing something that we want to directly influence you, influence your business, and I'll say it, help you. And there's not too many times that you see a project like this with the scope that we have. I don't know how many times you've rolled out something across the entire United States in about 24 months. It's a first time for me, but there's not too many times that we've been able to do that on time, on target, and under budget, and still come at you and say, we want to work for you. Like when you go back home and you think of problems and you put on your thinking cap for where we can improve training and professional development in this country as it relates to firefighters and emergency responders, you keep us on speed dial for how we can help you. We care about that, and I think in the future we're going to have more dialogue. There's a lot of good, that QR code goes to, if you want to sign up to keep up with the newsletter and all that stuff. I'm a little biased. Most important thing on there is my email, and then that's my cell phone. And so if you need something, once you're a fire person, you're my kind of people. If you've got something that you need, if you've got a venue we need to be at to visit with your stakeholders, like we'll be there. We'll take care of you. We have your back. With that, I'm happy to take questions for a couple of minutes before I get yanked off the stage, if there are any. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just go into a little bit with the transition from USFA, how that is happening and how you intend to keep things going with the adventures happening?
The USFA remains a core stakeholder in it. So the entire system is ran through a third-party contractor that is UL Fire Safety Research Institute. So we are the responsible party for making sure that the system is deployed, operational, adjusted, all those things. USFA, and more specifically the National Fire Data Center, is congressionally mandated to do certain things as it relates to data, and they remain consumers, basically, of that data, rather than the primary stakeholders of managing the system, which is kind of what caused the system to grow archaic if we were to really do a deep dive in it. They have the same viewing rights, they have the same data rights as the various state fire marshals. So basically when a local fire department completes an incident report, that report is immediately visible simultaneously at the state level and at the federal level. And when things are updated, right? Like it's no different than how if we all wanted to get on the hotel website right now, we could all be on the same hotel website, all book a room, and if we changed our room or upgraded to a suite, like we can just all do that simultaneously and everybody's able to not overbook. It's the same kind of system. So it's just going to be near real time, much more agile, and all those stakeholders that have traditionally been involved will remain involved, albeit a little different role. Hopefully that's a good enough answer for me to keep my job. Yes, sir.
Yes, Sam Hadler from SolarXR. Just a question, have you ever thought of using the digital twin technology in your system? Do you have any plans in implementing that? Like representing the data is good, but representing it more in a 3D, let's say, graphic representation plus a digital twin technology?
We have, I get a lot of conversations, not the first time I've heard of that, not the first time people want to talk about machine learning and AI. What I would tell you is that the sky's the limit for us. And this may be the linear firefighter nature of my brain, what I see us doing is getting our legs underneath us. Like right now, by far the most important thing for us to do is to not oversell or overdo the data visualization, but to make sure that we only have, and it varies state by state. You have states like Mississippi that have almost 100% of fire departments reporting data into the system, the current system. You have other states that is woefully not even close to that. And so we've got to figure out how many fire departments there are. We've got to get them understanding the new system. And then I think that you will see leaps in the data visualization, the analytics, and those sorts of things. So yes, I think we see all that. What I'm intensely focused on right now is just those departments getting into the system.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Is there a possibility for training academies to get, say, a dummy account where students could create incident reports for training purposes? So right now, all of our fire officer students have to run a live fire, structure fire. To get through their Officer 1, they have to ride a piece of fire apparatus out on our training grounds, be in command of a structure fire. The ability to close that loop at the end by filling out an incident report that wouldn't go into the system as a data point, but that our instructors could then grade and go over in the NERIS system would help us train them on the system, and it would also help us just get more folks' eyes on the system.
That's one of the benefits I get from going to these, is that I think that's a great idea, and I really would. I'm going to lie to people and probably say I came up with it, if I'm being straight with you. So don't be surprised if you all hear about it and they're like, I'm taking all the credit. But you know, my contract has a bonus structure, and good ideas are part of it, so it is what it is. Yes, what state?
Delaware.
So all of your states, if you don't know this, those of you that are integrated with your state fire marshals, probably much easier because your state fire marshals are already aware of it. If you're not integrated with your state fire marshal, that's probably the biggest hurdle. All the states have a test account in NERIS today that they can add you as a user, and once you're kind of oriented, and we've given this system, by the way, to firefighters without any education, and they figure it out in about 10 minutes. I wouldn't say it's firefighter proof, but it's damn close. So yes, I love that idea. If you have trouble, hurdles, I can give you access into different test accounts. If for some reason the Delaware Fire Marshal's Office didn't think it was appropriate, I think there's another way to do it to allow your students that access. However, I can't think of any argument that would seem to indicate that's a bad idea. So yes,
No,
email.
I'll walk across the parking lot to our guy.
Even better. When you can solve it like that, it makes it a lot easier than me getting involved, I assure you. Any other questions or anything? Okay, thank you all very much for the opportunity to come visit. Hopefully I got you close to back on time, and I'll see you next time it's appropriate to come update you.
Thank you, Tom. I always appreciate it.